I said to you 2 weeks ago that a fake faith has no power to change your life. It has no power to save you, and it has no power to answer your prayers. And it certainly has no power to transform or to change your life. And when life doesn't work and things aren't going well, a fake faith isn't going to work for you either. So in the book of James, we come now to the second half of chapter 2, where we have some instructions, some guidance written to help us know the difference between a real faith and a fake faith. And so today, we're continuing our current topic in the book of James entitled, How to Know a Fake. Now, I believe that this can make a huge change in your life and be very helpful to you, because it's really simple to understand and it's really basic to know the difference between a fake faith and a real faith. Now, let me read again for you James chapter 2, beginning in verse 14 down through verse 20. And James says this to us. He writes, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm, and be well fed,' but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is that? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. But someone will say, 'Well, you have faith and I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds.' You believe that there's one God. Well, good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. You foolish person, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless?" So the question is, what is real faith? Well, first, as I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago, James tells us 4 things that real faith is not. And then he gives us 2 examples of what real faith should look like, what real faith is really all about. And you'll remember that 2 weeks ago, we looked at the first 2 of these 4 things that real faith is not. Now, as we continue to go through this today, I would encourage you to use these things we're talking about as a quiz for your own self-evaluation. In other words, do I have these saving faith items in my own life? Now, I want to take some time today to review what we discussed first a couple of weeks ago as a reminder. First, James chapter 2 verse 14 says this, which we just read, but I want to read this portion again. "Dear brothers and sisters, what's the use of saying you have faith if you don't prove it by your actions?" That kind of faith can't save anybody. Now, what James is saying is, what's the use of saying you have faith in your life if you don't have any actions in your life to back it up or to prove it? And so here's the first thing he says to us that real faith is not. Real faith, he says, is more than just words I speak. Real faith is more than just the words I speak. You see, knowing all the religious lingo and saying all of the right Christian verbiage, just because you say you have faith doesn't guarantee that you've got it. Have you ever met anybody who sounded like a believer? I mean, they knew all the right words, or they know all the right things to say, but their lifestyle is totally different from what they say. Their lifestyle doesn't match their words. And in our modern day, our modern culture, we make this mistake and we tend to label anybody who's a celebrity or anybody who's a sports star as a Christian if they just even kind of sort of sound like a Christian. You know what I mean? You see, even if they're talking about God, that doesn't mean they're a Christian. And James is saying just because you say you have faith and that you're a Christian doesn't mean you've really got it. Because real faith, James says, is more than just mere words that are spewed out of our mouths. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, you'll remember that Jesus says this to us: "Not everyone who says that I am their Lord is going to enter into the kingdom of heaven." The only people, and this is Jesus talking now, he says this: the only people who will enter heaven are those who do what my Father in heaven wants them to do. You see, it's not just what you say in your life, but more importantly, it's about what you do. So what value is a phony faith? I mean, what value is a fake faith? James says absolutely none. It has no value at all. It's worthless. James says talk is cheap. So real faith is more than just words I say or I speak. Number two, the second thing James says is this: real faith is more than just an emotion I feel. Real faith is more than just an emotion I feel. In fact, he says that in the very next verse. Real faith is more than your feelings or more than an emotion that you've got or that you feel. You can be inspired and you can be moved and you can be really emotional, and guess what? Never have real or genuine faith. In fact, James gives us an example of this in verses 15 through 17 of chapter 2. We also read this earlier, but I'm going to read it again. He says this: "Suppose you see your brother or your sister and they need food or clothing, and you say to them, 'I wish you well, I feel for you, I hope you stay warm, I hope you eat well,' but then you do nothing to meet their needs." James says, what good does your sympathy do? He says it's worth nothing. In the same way, James is still talking, and he says, if your faith isn't accompanied by action, it doesn't work. It's dead. Your faith is a dead faith, and it is dead and useless. You see the sarcasm that James is using there? He says, you go up to somebody who's out of work and they need food and they're in the food lines, and you go up to them and you say, hey, friend, I feel really sorry for you. I'm sorry to hear about what happened. Sorry that you lost your job, or sorry that you lost your retirement. But hang in there. Just cheer up. Keep your chin up. Don't worry. I want you to be happy because you know what? I believe it's all going to work out for you in the end. And we use all these wonderful and great cliches and all of these pious platitudes and say, you know what, buddy? You know what, sis? I'll be praying for you. I just want you to know that I'm lifting you up in my prayers. I'm holding you up to God in prayer. But the reality is they don't need your prayers nor mine. They need food, plain and simple. So we can say all of these wonderful sounding words to them, but it's not faith unless we actually do something about it. Well, here is where I want to pick up with our study today. Number 3, and the third thing James says to us is this: real faith is more than an idea I debate. Real faith is more than an idea I debate. And he says that in the very next verse here in James chapter 2. You see, for some people, faith is just this intellectual game they play. It's just a mental challenge. It's a theology to be studied, or a doctrinal thing to be debated, or it's some kind of dogma that they need to defend, or just simply an idea to be discussed. It's truth to be talked about, right? That's how some people look at their Christian faith. In other words, for them, faith is not something you do. Faith is just a conversation. They love to talk, 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 talk. They'll talk all day long and all night long about God, about faith, and they'll be happy to debate you. And it's all about conversation and has nothing to do with conduct. They would rather discuss the Bible than do it. They'd rather debate theology than to practice it and do it in their life. And in James chapter 2, verse 18 here, he imagines an intellectual objector. This third kind of a fake faith that we're talking about. He says this in verse 18. Now, someone may argue, isn't it possible that some people have good faith while other people do good deeds? And James says, but I say no. No, I can't see your real faith if you don't do anything. If you don't do any real deeds to show me. And he goes on and says, in contrast, I can show you my faith by the good things I do. Excuse me. In other words, he's saying, the guy goes, that's talking here, you're into doing good things, right? Well, I'm into discussing good things. I like to talk about it. I like to discuss it. I like to converse about the Bible. I don't really want to practice doing it. I just kind of want to, talk about it, discuss it. And when that happens in someone's life, they're saying, that's cool, but I just don't want to get my hands dirty. I really don't want to do anything about my faith. I'd rather just, talk about it or argue online or on social media. I don't want to obey God, really. I kind of want to debate about God. And I'll discuss it all night. But don't ask me to make any commitment. You see, my friends, that's nothing more than a fake faith. Now, there's a key phrase in verse 18 where James says this, show me, 2 words, show me. He says, how do I know you've got real faith unless you show me? He says real faith is visible. It's apparent. You can really see the results. So he says, you show me. Now, here's the fact. Faith, like love, is odorless. Listen to this. Faith, like love, is odorless. It's colorless. It's weightless. You can't see it. So how do you know if somebody really has faith? Well, James says, here's the answer. You look at his lifestyle or you look at her lifestyle. You see, real faith is kind of like calories. You can't see calories, but you can sure see the results of calories, can't you? You can't see them, and you're never going to see a calorie in your life, but you can definitely tell the results of calories. And that's what faith is. That's what faith is like. You can't see it. It's odorless because it's invisible. But if you've got it, it's got results if it's real, if it's genuine faith. Some of you remember, if you're old enough, growing up, there was a classic movie called The Invisible Man. Remember that? And in the movie, you only knew he was moving around if he moved things. He tips over a cup or he opens a door. And the point here I'm making is that real faith, you can't see it by itself, but real faith is expressed in visible and tangible ways. Some of you probably know that Missouri is known as or is called the Show Me State. It's even on their license plate. Now, just like Missouri is a show me state, James is saying, I'm the show me man. Show me your faith and then I'll know it's real. Don't tell me, don't tell me it's words you say is what your faith is all about. Don't tell it to me. Don't say it's all about how you feel, that it's an emotion of emotion, because real faith is something you do. James says, if you claim to be a Christian, then I have the right to ask you to prove it to me. And the way you prove it to me is by and through your actions in your life. You see, the truth is really this. Somebody as powerful as God cannot possibly come into your life without changing you visibly. Let me say it again. It's impossible for somebody as big as God to come into your life and it does not change you in a visible and tangible way for people to see it. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17 says this, therefore if any man be in Christ, he or she is a new creature. The old has passed away and the new has come. Everything becomes new. Now, it doesn't become new in your life overnight. I mean, I understand that, and so do you. But it does become new in your life over time as you grow and mature as a Christian, as a believer in Christ. And if I were to grab a 220-volt wire of electricity, I would know it instantly, and you would too. And it's really just like you know when you grab that hot wire of electricity. You know when God's come into your life in the same way because it changes you from the inside out. And you can definitely sense the change He's making in your life. Now, here's the question. And I want you to really think about this. Really think about this question today. We're not persecuted right now in America for our faith. We're harassed, but we're not persecuted. But if you were arrested for being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Would there be enough evidence to convict you or to convict me of being a Christian? Could people say of you or me, I see the changes in their lives? You see, real faith always produces a changed life. It's more than the words I say. It's more than an emotion I feel. I experienced a wonderful emotion in that service. Well, that's great. But true faith is more than an emotion you feel. And third, as we've discussed today, it's more than an idea that I debate. Well, this is where we're going to end for today. Next week, we'll pick up with number 4 of what a real faith is not. And then we'll look together at 2 examples of what a real faith, a genuine faith really is, as we conclude this topic of how to know a faith.